Hey everyone, this is Sal Valencia, your financial pal with Edward Jones. For those who don't know me, I am an advisor that will sit down with you and go over your personal and financial goals. I will break them into 3 categories: needs, wants, and wishes. I enjoy working through life challenges with my clients and help educate those who aren't familiar with investing. If you ever have questions and need someone reliable and trustworthy, give me a call. My number is 336-748-1271. Hola, me llamo Salvador Valencia y trabajo con Edward Jones. Soy un asesor financiero y lo que hago es planear para el futuro. Sé que hay muchos cambios que pueden ocurrir, pero siempre estará ahí por ustedes cuando pase algo. Si tienen preguntas sobre inversiones o cómo su dinero puede trabajar más fuerte para ustedes, llámame. Mi número es 336-748-1271.
Welcome to the Heath Geeks Book Club podcast. Listen in as Kristen Norton and Eleanor Russell review all those great health and wellness books you've been wanting to read or you have read and want to talk about. Here's Kristen and Eleanor.
Calling all the women out there, this one is for you. We are going to talk about Bikini Industrial Complex, the Monitor, the Patriarchy, and more. And we're talking about Burnout, the secret to unlocking the stress cycle. This is a book by Emily Nagoski and Amelia Nagoski. Hopefully I said that last name right. And hopefully that piques your interest into what we're talking about today.
Hey, if you're as interested in prevention as I am, contact me, Eleanor Russell, at 360health, number 4, letter U.com. Whether you're interested in financial wellness or physical health products, 360 Health invites you to become part of our community. Yeah, these authors, this is kind of, maybe the first book we've read by twins.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of fun. I didn't catch on to that. I was kind of slow. But anyway, yeah. Did we give the name of that?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, good. So Emily Nagoski, she's a PhD, and Amelia, her sister, is the musician, conductor.
Yeah.
So
they're a fun pair.
Oh, yeah.
Very interesting backgrounds that they bring to this. And, you know, we've read a book about Brene Brown, or by Brene Brown, and I am a big fan. Well, she even writes on the front of the book, this book is a gift. I've been practicing their strategies, and it's a total game changer. Mm-hmm. Now, if you listen
I'm not surprised that she liked this book.
Yeah. If you listen to our last book review, we talked about how emotions are made, and it was very much the science, technical, the why of emotions, and the brain chemistry of emotions. And Burnout, I would say, gets into the same concepts of like emotional exhaustion, but more so the practical side of it. What do we do about it? How does this look in everyday lives? And so I'm excited to talk about it. The book is in several parts, three parts. Mm-hmm. Let me get to this. Part 1, what you take with you. Part 2, the real enemy. And Part 3, wax on, wax off. So you can get from these titles that they are not very technical. They are using fun terms, easily relatable terms. There's a ton of movie quotes and references in this.
Yay.
So, no, I like that for someone that is a health geek but can easily get distracted or deterred by things that are too sciencey or too technical. So good job to Emily and Amelia for making something very easy to read and fun and relatable. And for Eleanor, the true health geek over there.
Oh, no, you are the true one.
You might have missed the technical part to it.
Oh,
like
no.
Wishing it was there?
A little bit, maybe. And so part of my feeling is feminism. So yeah, this is a book for women and for somewhat militant women, I guess. Maybe. No, I don't think that's fair. But
okay,
there were parts of it that I had to just kind of read over kind of quickly and say, I'm not sure I'd totally accept that because I love men. I really think a lot of men right now are getting short-shifted in all of this health and wellness thing that we're talking about, and we are so happy to put people in groups. And I think there are individuals that are men and individuals that are women that have the same kinds of problems. And maybe I'm off base there, but
I think that's fair to say. Yeah.
And so she talks about the human giver syndrome in here, and in her introduction, that's one of the things that she puts forward is that Kate Mann in Down Girl: The Logic of Misogyny describes a system of one class of people, the human givers, are expected to offer their time, attention, affection, and bodies willingly, placidly to the other class of people, the human beings. The implication in these terms is that human beings have a moral obligation to be or express their humanity, while human givers have a moral obligation to give their humanity to the human beings. Guess which one women are? And that's kind of a classical statement, perhaps, or stereotypical, and is true in some instances. But anyway, that's what she's working on here.
So what she's saying is basically the women are the nurturers and the care.
No, the subservience.
Oh, okay.
It's more of a we're discounted, and we're to give our humanity to you guys because you all will really make a difference in the world, and we won't.
Look, I don't want it.
That's what I'm saying. So I had a struggle there, but I do think it moves from there in a good way, because there are some of us who are self-sacrificing, and that creates problems for us. And that can be men, is what I'm saying, because I know men who put a whole lot of burden on themselves from societal expectations that nobody asked them to do.
I was going to say, I don't want to discount the importance of this book for women, but to your point, there could be a whole separate book for men.
Yeah.
In this topic.
That would speak to them too.
That would speak to them and their issue or expectations that they have to deal with.
Yeah. So anyway, so moving on from that, though, because she does refer back to these human givers throughout this book and says, here's the trouble that we fall into sometimes, and what to get out of it. So, it's an interesting book. And burnout is with us. We know Americans are in trouble. We have a lot of us that are overworked, undernourished, or whatever, and not finding our way. And we're on a lot of medications. We're over-medicated. So burnout's real, and we need to confront it and figure out how do we get through this.
Yeah.
And she's got some ideas.
Well, I want to not move away from the human giver conversation just yet, because you mentioned that what it is, and I just want to go here. So she says, human givers must at all times be pretty, happy, calm, generous, and attentive to the needs of others.
If you buy into that, which a lot of us do.
But a lot of us do.
And our society, we read that book about emotions, about how we enforce each other's and influence each other's emotions. This is where we get influenced.
So this reminded me of the Barbie monologue about how hard it is to be a woman, because even now, you said this is a very classical view, and we don't always buy into it because women can work and we can vote and all these things. But now it's almost this new set of challenges. So let's listen to this.
It is literally impossible to be a woman. You are so beautiful and so smart, and it kills me that you don't think you're good enough. Like, we have to always be extraordinary. But somehow we're always doing it wrong. Like, you have to be thin, but not too thin. And you can never say you want to be thin. You have to say you want to be healthy, but also you have to be thin. You have to have money, but you can't ask for money, because that's crass. You have to be a boss, but you can't be mean. You have to lead, but you can't squash other people's ideas. You're supposed to love being a mother, but don't talk about your kids all the damn time. You have to be a career woman, but also always be looking out for other people. You have to answer for men's bad behavior, which is insane, but if you point that out, you're accused of complaining. You're supposed to stay pretty for men, but not so pretty that you tempt them too much or that you threaten other women, because you're supposed to be a part of the sisterhood, but always stand out and always be grateful. But never forget that the system is rigged, so find a way to acknowledge that, but also always be grateful. You have to never get old, never be rude, never show off, never be selfish, never fall down, never fail, never show fear, never get out of line. It's too hard, it's too contradictory, and nobody gives you a medal or says thank you. And it turns out, in fact, that not only are you doing everything wrong, but also everything is your fault. I'm just so tired of watching myself and every single other woman tie herself into knots so that people will like us.
Yeah, I mean, that
She
sums
read
it
the
up
book.
pretty nicely, right?
She read the book. The system's rigged.
The system's rigged. Anyway, well, this is in 3 parts. I just want to introduce all the parts, and then we can dive in. Is that okay?
Sure.
So 1, what we take with us, we're going to learn about the stress response cycle, the monitor, quote unquote, and meaning in life. 2, we learn about the real enemy. 3 is the science of winning the war against the enemy, and how to build resilience. So starting with...
Hey, seriously, I think they did read this book because it came out in 2018, right?
Oh, yeah.
Or no, it didn't. It was 2020 here, but she said she started it in 2015, and it took a while to get it to press, evidently.
Or it could just mean that this is valuable and it's more, what's the word I'm looking for? It's more relevant than the purists or the traditionalists want to admit. That, I mean, even if she didn't read the book,
Yeah.
then that means there are many people who believe this.
Think this
yeah,
way.
yeah, right, exactly. Uh-huh. Yeah, it was. So this is a Ballantine book from Penguin Random House.
Well, let's talk about stress and
Yep.
stressors, because they point out those are
Well,
two
we just
different
heard a bunch
things.
of them.
Yeah, exactly. So the authors remind us that there are stressors, which is anything you see, hear, smell, touch, taste, or even imagine that could do you harm and that activates our stress. Now, this kind of ties back to our other book that author might argue a little bit with that, because
You mean emotions? How emotions are made?
how emotions are made and whether they're triggered or not. But anyway, these are stressors are the things that your body might interpret as harm. So external, like work, money, family, time, cultural norms, and internal, even self-criticism, body image, identity, and memories can all potentially trigger or make our bodies feel like we're in harm.
Yeah, they trigger. Well, they
trigger the
activate the stress response.
There you go.
Yeah, because that body budgeting system may say we need energy to confront this. Yeah,
And
so
so-
pump out that cortisol.
And stress then is defined as the neurological and physiological shift in your body. And they say you have to handle the stressors, but you also have to handle the stress. So you can't just take care of work, maybe you change jobs. You have to complete that stress cycle. So we'll get into what that means a little bit, maybe.
Since the title of the book is Burnout, can we just talk
define
about
burnout.
Yeah, what is burnout? And she says it's 3-part. It's emotional exhaustion, and it's a depersonalization, like you're just depleted of empathy, caring, compassion. It's gone. And then the third one would be a decreased sense of accomplishment. So that's pretty not a good space to be in. And counter to that would be wellness. And so she has a definition for wellness as well.
I loved that.
Yeah, wellness is not a state of being, but a state of action. And it's the freedom to move fluidly through cyclical, oscillating experiences of being human. So it goes on and on and on. It's going to change. Things are not static. So we're always confronting change. And so we can get burned out if we don't replenish ourselves. But the stress, if we're activating the stress response, just to review that, there's a stress that your receptors pick up on. And then you get an action, and then you recover. So if we
You're
pick up...
supposed to recover.
Well, that's the cycle.
That's the completed cycle.
And she's advocating for be sure we complete the cycle where we're getting into trouble. And I think I may have blurred this book with that book on emotions.
Because they go hand in hand in
yes,
a way.
and I think maybe I misspoke in that last book, and I'll identify that for you later. But it's okay because it's all the same wheelhouse. But what are the signs of burnout? Did you pick up any of those signs? Because I think that's would be helpful for me to recognize in myself. But also, I was surprised at some of them. One is you're doing the same thing over and over. Mm-hmm. And I have found myself doing that frequently when I'm on high tilt, like getting ready for this podcast. And I'll read the same page over and over and go, oh, what am I doing? But anyway, so that's easy enough to identify if you can kind of get your antenna up to say, oh, you're repeating the same thing instead of staying in that cycle. The second one is chandeliering. And I was not familiar with that, but evidently some of us get so exhausted that we just jump. Have you ever done that? Or do you know it? Have you witnessed that before?
Well, to me, this is kind of like holding something back and then you have... Like, I've had a really bad day, but then one of my kids says something that's innocent and fine, but I snap at them.
Okay,
like
maybe that's a jump.
It's a jump, right? It's like I reacted like that was the worst thing in the world when it really wasn't. Yeah. That's what I interpret chandeliering as.
Well, and I think maybe in younger children, you might see that when they're really frustrated and exhausted. They just might just jump, a lot because they just don't know what to do and their muscles are contracting. Anyway, the third one was hiding, which I can, I've witnessed that. People just withdraw into a dark room. Mm-hmm. I worked with some folks that their offices would close for way too long, just didn't want to confront the challenges of the day-to-day workplace. And it was noticeable, and they were absent, not participatory. And then the fourth one is just when your body feels out of whack. You just don't feel right. So if you're experiencing any of those, you might take a moment and say, I might need to recover. I'm burning. I am at the end of I'm exhausted.
And I think traditionally when we hear burnout, we think of vocational burnout. Mm-hmm. Like teachers are burnout. Yeah, right. Mm-hmm. And this is a thing, right? Definitely a thing. Teachers are burnout. Medical professionals can burn out at a high rate, 52% actually.
Isn't it like the highest rate of suicide among the medical people is dentists?
Yes. Isn't that interesting?
It is.
Yeah, and the social workers have a really high burnout.
Mm. Yeah, well, they said... not social workers. How did they describe them in here? Humanitarian workers.
Oh.
And, I'm sure social workers, but they specifically labeled international humanitarian workers.
Okay.
Which I could see that. And then they also call to attention parental burnout. And I feel like many of us were there in COVID, especially because we were maybe parentally burnout and with our job burnout, and it was all too much all at once. But I think that this book really centers around burnout in the sense of emotional exhaustion.
Well, that clip that you played from Barbie there, there's a whole list of ways you could burn out on that one.
Right, and so it's geared towards women.
Yeah, this is a book for women.
Mm-hmm. So we learn a lot about emotions and the stress cycle, and I love this analogy that emotions are tunnels. And if you go all the way through them, you get to the light at the end of the tunnel. You complete this cycle, and these things just kind of fade away. But we can get stuck, and that's when exhaustion happens, is when we get stuck in emotion and we're not completely going through the tunnel. And they go into why we might get stuck. Maybe it's constant repetitive exposure, like a stressful job, you don't like your boss is a jerk. Like you said, all of those things that Barbie said in the Barbie movie.
That's comprehensive.
Maybe we can't find our way through the tunnel, especially on our own. Things like grief, helplessness, rage. These are things that are hard to process on our own, and we can get stuck if we try to do that. We can be trapped in a place where we are not free to move through the tunnel. That the lack of wellness, right? So this is human giver syndrome, as they would say, or it's maybe you grew up in an environment that you didn't have a lot of control over, so you're not free to be well there. So those are the reasons why we get stuck, and when burnout can happen.
Yeah. So you mentioned earlier this monitoring. So we have a monitor, and it has a fancy name, and it's called the discrepancy reducing increasing feedback loop.
You can see why they just decided to call it the monitor.
The monitor, yeah. It knows your goals, and it's checking on that, this monitor, and it knows how much effort you're putting or investing into these goals and how much progress you're making. So this Barbie thing where, you have to look beautiful and you have to be thin, all that. So if that's your goal, your monitor's checking that and how much effort you're putting into being thin and how much progress you're making. And if you're not making it, there's a discrepancy, in there. And so what they're saying is we have to, that monitor is going to help us acknowledge the difficulty and then assess if it's worth it. And then we can make a decision to change the expectations.
I don't know if this is just a hard concept to explain, but that was one of the hardest thing for me to grasp and really take with me is that monitor concept.
Yeah, but that idea that there's this discrepancy reducing, and it's kind of the emotion-made predictability in the emotions where we're predicting outcomes and comparing it to reality and then deciding, do we continue that? But what she's saying here is we get into trouble when we don't acknowledge that discrepancy and we ignore it. Because you can either give up or you can explore and exploit it. You don't have to, keep in the rut, but that monitor's there to help us jump off the wheel.
Yeah, in that section, I really like the tools within it. So
yes.
Dealing with stressors you can control by planful problem solving. Dealing with the stressors you can't control by positive reappraisal. So looking at things maybe as an opportunity or a challenge, putting a positive spin on it where you can. And I don't know, I didn't put a ton of notes in that section, but I like those two concepts. Do you have more on that?
Yeah, I think maybe that meaning, again, that emotional term of meaning that's defining, what's going on and not knowing why it's a profound type of suffering. There's that monitor's in there trying to reduce the discrepancies. And I don't know. I'm willing to say it's like a I like the word monitor. Yeah. She's got a good word there.
Well, she does have a tool in here for like evaluating when it is the right time to quit or to persist.
She persisted.
Yeah. So that was cool.
Yeah, her worksheets are good. I mean, she's got if you take the time to do, in some of these books, they give us tools to assess where we are. And if you take the time to do them, you learn stuff. So she's given you a way to find out where you're sitting on some of these things. I also, before we move too far into the book, on that stress cycle, where she says we're failing sometimes to recover, she does give us some tips on things to do. The best thing to break the stress cycle is to do something. And I remember Alcoholics Anonymous has a thing, move a muscle, change a thought idea. But physical activity is the number one thing that you can do to help with burnout. And breathing. We read a book on breath that we so often forget we have at our disposal all day long is change our breathing patterns. Do some deep breathing.
Can I jump ahead of you real quick before you continue that list? I just think this is a really great way to set it up, the way they did in the book. So we always hear about the running from the saber-toothed tiger
Yes.
or whatever. And this was just a new way to think about it. So I wanted to share. So suppose you're running away from the lion. That's what she uses. And then it's struck by lightning. You turn and see the dead lion, but do you suddenly feel peaceful and relaxed? She points out, we can't just tell yourself that you're okay. You can't just tell yourself that you're okay. To Eleanor's point that she just made, you have to do something. So you don't just stop and say, oh, I feel peaceful and relaxed. The lion died. No, you stop, puzzled, heart pounding, eyes darting in search of the threat. Your body still wants to run or fight or hide in a cave and cry. The threat may have been dealt with by the act of God, but you're left still needing to do something to let your body know you're safe.
Yes, that being safe. You got to close the cycle.
That's right. I just liked the way she set that up.
I like that too. Yeah. So things that you can do is breathing if you're not going to run, and then some positive social interactions, which we've talked about before. We're connected humans. We need our social supports. But my favorite one that I like to use is laughter.
Deep belly laughing.
Yeah, and the lion fell over dead. Isn't that funny? It's kind of perverse, isn't it? Tim, get in here. You can go there, I know.
Yeah. My sense of humor is twisted anyway, so who knows
So's
where I
mine.
would go. But yeah, I'm all for. I'm a laugher, and.
Inappropriately.
Yeah, sometimes very inappropriate. But the thing is when things are going crazy, I may just start laughing at it. And then the whole thing, it helps. I have to laugh to keep from crying or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, yes, sometimes. But I remember there was a time when I was in a band. We had band practice. And the guitar player's car, they had gotten broken into, and they stole stereo at practice. And the drummer and I were just out there laughing and felt really bad about it the whole time. But that's how we handled it, and the guitar player is like, why are you guys laughing? This is not funny. I said, dude, we know it's absolutely not funny. But this is how...
You're dealing with
we
it.
react to it.
Which is
You're
exactly
completing the
what
stress cycle.
Lisa Barrett Feldman talked about in the book on how emotions are made. She said those of us observing that would think something's wrong and that you're laughing at that. You must have had something to do with that. So we don't know how you feel, but we can make a conscious decision about, I just interpreted that. And I was wrong. And so real wrong. And so we should not assume we know how each other feels.
Right.
But I was going to tell a
I
story.
hate that phrase anyway. Oh, I know how you feel.
Yeah.
No, you
don't.
might understand what I'm going through, but you don't know what I feel.
You can't. You're not me.
You're not me. And no matter if we went through the exact same thing, say we were brothers and sisters,
Yep.
and lost a parent.
It's different.
Luckily I haven't, but we would probably feel differently about it. We would feel the same thing, but how we felt.
So that's
would be
that category, the category of death. Yeah, but I did that. I was a young
See what I did there?
young teenager, and maybe a little bit younger, and my mother broke her toe, and I can remember laughing my head off because I was awful. But that was what happened to me. I was so shocked, and I was scared probably. I'd never seen her hurt like that, and she was crying, and it was awful. And I'm sitting there laughing. And so to this day, people do not bring me around a catastrophe because they know I'm going to laugh. It's not the right thing to do.
Yeah.
So, but it helps. It closes that cycle like, okay, we're going to be able to deal with this.
Well, it's funny because she says one of the reasons why we don't complete the stress cycle is
don't have time.
social appropriateness. Sometimes the brain activates a stress response and you can't do the thing it's trying to tell you to do. So your brain was telling you to laugh, but you're like, oh no, people are going to misjudge this.
And it turns you into a chemical mess.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, the way she described it in one of the situations is you're soaked in stress juice, just waiting for some cue that you are safe.
I remember that stress juice. We're going to use that again. That's good. That's good. There you go.
Stress jus.
Anyway, we got off track a little bit. Okay, so you mentioned positive social interaction.
Laughter.
laughter,
And then affection.
affection. Ooh, these
Go for that one.
So the 20
second
second
hug.
hug. Research suggests a 20-second hug can change your hormones, lower your blood pressure and heart rate, and improve mood, all of which are reflected in the post-hug increase in the social bonding hormone oxytocin.
I tried that. I said, hey, you got to hold me for 20 minutes, 20 seconds. Well, 20 minutes was good too, but
Yeah.
20 seconds. And it was awkward. And she describes how you do it. You have to be both in full contact with the floor. You can't be leaning on the other one.
Yeah.
You have to be independently in this
Yeah, that's
hug.
odd.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it was strange. And it was a lot of fun because we did a scientific experiment on that. We did not do the 6-second kiss, but that's something that some people could do.
Yeah, that's another
And we've
one.
read about that before.
It's for 6 seconds requires you to stop and deliberately notice that you like this person, that you trust them, and that you feel affection for them. By noticing those things, the kiss tells your body that you are safe with your tribe.
And we've read about that one in another book because they were saying that it's important to do that in the morning before you leave, just for that, but also for the return when you get back.
I want to go on a side note
Yeah.
here. You know how we mentioned that there could be a book like this for men? I'm watching this documentary called Wrexham, if you guys heard of it.
That's Ryan Reynolds, right?
He takes ownership of a soccer club.
With his business partner.
This is a documentary?
It is
Well, it's a reality show, but it's not like scripted reality.
Oh,
This
okay.
is true reality.
Okay.
They really do own this. It's basically a relegated soccer team. It's not the Premier League, but it's
They're
two.
trying to move it up
Yeah.
in
Okay.
status. And
Yeah.
But anyway, they kind of go off on side notes. And one of the episodes was highlighting men and sports and how important sports is for allowing men to bond socially in a socially appropriate way.
Yeah.
And they were talking about how men hug. It's usually like a quick arm around the back and a quick little tap on the back, and that's it. And when I read this, I'm like, oh, so many men are missing out, especially if they don't have a significant other to go kiss for 6
Yeah.
seconds.
Right.
On this, 20-second hug, women aren't afraid to sit there and hold on
Right.
to their buddies,
Yeah.
but you don't see men do that. So,
I have a couple of friends that I do that with.
oh, good.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear
Well,
that.
you're healthy. You're healthy.
I'm not afraid to show my affection towards other men that I really do have an affinity for. My friend Clay Howard, I'll say his name, but
Hey, Clay.
he's 6'9" and the lead singer of the yacht club
Oh,
thing.
yeah.
So he and I will go up and just
Bear hug.
grab hold. Now, was it 20 seconds? Maybe
Maybe
not.
not.
Maybe 15.
But it's more than
but it's it's not
Long
just
enough.
a hi, how are you? We just go up and just because we don't see each other often enough, and just go up and do that. And I have a couple others that I'm not afraid.
That's good.
Well, if you don't have those options, you do have
The dog.
there we go. We got the pet idea. Get yourself a dog.
No wonder, it says, no wonder people who walk their dogs get more exercise and feel better than people who don't. They're getting exercise and affection at the same time. So,
Well, the other one is the big old cry. But that is a release, and it's a way to, like, I'm safe, and I'm letting that energy out that was going to go some other way. It's going to come out through that. You look like you want to say something, Kristen.
oh, I just have lots of thoughts on that. She says crying doesn't solve or anyone who says crying doesn't solve anything doesn't know the difference between dealing with the stress and dealing with the situation that causes the stress. No, I have people cry in my office a lot because,
Yeah.
you think nutrition is just about food, but it's
No.
not. It's a deep
a
thing.
lifestyle change
Yeah,
in a
and
lot of
so many things affected, and there's a lot of emotions around changing your lifestyle and things that hold you back. So when people cry, I'm like, no, this is good. Let
Yeah.
it out. And they're like, I'm sorry, I'm crying.
See, they're trying to suppress it. Like she said, you get into trouble when you try to suppress it.
Yeah, because I guess
It's not
they're
appropriate.
thinking
Yeah.
they're trying to be more socially appropriate. Yeah. But a good old cry is a good thing for us, right? But we may have grown up hearing
Don't cry.
Don't
and
cry.
particularly men, don't cry. you're not to cry.
Again,
Another
I have
reason
no
why-
problem crying.
Well, see, we know you're healthy, or you're getting healthy.
Tired of feeling stuck in your health journey? At Well Balanced Nutrition, we understand that achieving your health goals isn't just about what you eat. It's about overcoming the mental roadblocks holding you back. Our team of expert nutrition coaches is here to guide you every step of the way, helping you break through mindset barriers and reach your full potential. Don't let mindset barriers stand in the way of your health and happiness. Call Well Balanced Nutrition today and start your journey to a better you.
Yeah, so the other thing that I really like is the creative expression. Like
That's
you talk
a
about your
fun
music,
one. Mm-hmm.
you know, pick up a guitar and, if you want to complete that cycle, that's a good way to do it after you've had some emotional event or some stress, huge stress, or, paint a painting or, write in your journal.
Yeah.
Something creative. And
What's funny, and I am a songwriter, although I haven't written a song in over 12 years now, 14 years now.
And that,
But here's the thing. It's easier to write a sad song than a happy song because sad songs, they say so much, to quote Elton John, but they really do. That emotion is easier to tap into creatively, whereas happiness...
Well, see, happiness is a cure for this thing. So
Yeah.
happiness and the songwriting are in the same category over here. The goal is
Yeah.
to get recovered, and so you don't use one of those to negate. You want to keep. Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
So the sad song that's great.
Yeah. But
Well,
the last song I wrote
you haven't been
was a
sad.
happy song.
Oh,
It was the song I wrote for my wife before we ever started dating.
I love it. I love it.
And
It was her song.
It's her song, and it gets played often on Camel City Radio.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Oh, what a great
Well,
story.
I was going to say that even if you don't feel creative, listening to a song is a good outlet. And the authors say, in this way, literary, visual, and performing arts of all kinds give us a chance to celebrate and move through big emotions. It's like a cultural loophole in a society that tells us to be nice and not make waves. Take advantage of that loophole. Write that sad song or that happy song, whatever it is. Express it. Yeah, songs are kind of that loophole. That makes a lot of sense. Muscle progression. Did you catch that one? It was under the section, like, what if you don't like exercise or you can't exercise? Yeah. One way to complete the stress cycle is to tense all of your muscles and then relax them. And you can do that one by one, and you should be able to feel like your body go through the emotions in that way. So that was nice that she included that.
Hey, I want to talk about something else this author taught me.
What's that?
TL:DR.
Too long, didn't read.
Yeah, I didn't know that. Why didn't you tell me that a long time
Well,
ago?
the funny thing is most people put that at the end of a long diatribe. I'm like,
Put that at the top.
you should tell this at the top so I can skip all that.
Well, they're at the end of the chapters.
Yeah. So too long, didn't read. So she has a really nice condensation of her chapter that's very helpful. To
Yep,
just say, these are the key points I was hoping you picked up on when you read this.
Right. So we covered those, that just because you've dealt with a stressor, that doesn't mean you've dealt with the stress itself. That physical activity is the single most efficient strategy for completing the cycle. Affection also works. We talked about other things. And then wellness being the freedom to move fluidly through the cycles of being human. Mm-hmm. Wellness is thus not a state of being. It's a state of action. I love that. And then we get into this. Let's see, we're in part 2. We get into patriarchy.
Yes.
And
Yeah,
it's
she wants
funny.
us to smash it.
She wants to smash it.
Yeah, so you complete the cycle feels about patriarchy.
Oh, wait. I wanted to really talk about something in that
Okay.
last section.
Okay.
Sorry, we're bouncing around a little bit, but
Yeah.
that's okay. It's a book
It's
club.
a book club. Did you bring the wine?
I need some.
I saw a picture of a cat. The only thing at the book club was the cat. And they said, I'm the only one that read the book. Everybody else is drinking wine.
I got my water. That's about it today.
I got coffee.
I have liquor.
No, this is the Health Geeks Book Club.
Hey, that's healthy.
Okay, so in the past, in one of our
Yes,
episodes,
okay.
we brought Cyrus Bush on,
Yes.
and we talked about tapping or
Yes, we did.
emotional freedom technique. So recently, I had the privilege of taking his course, and I'm now certified in tapping. And one of the really cool videos he showed us during that is how a polar bear, he was, what's that word? They had to help him out. So they had to make him pass out, basically. And so when he was coming out from that,
The polar bear.
the polar bear, he was shaking. And this is something that our bodies do when they come out of stress or trauma.
Yes.
But again, with social appropriateness, we don't really like, oh, what is she doing? She's shaking. Why is she shaking? Or maybe we're revisiting a trauma and then our bodies are shaking. And I don't know that I have anything to say about that, but it was cool to read that, learn about it in his course and then read about it in this Burnout book, that shaking is a natural way that our bodies release those stress hormones.
Yeah. Yeah. If you've ever been in a wreck or something like that, and a lot of people will call it adrenaline surge or whatever, and recovery from that surge. But yeah, it's you do have a physical response to large surges of these chemicals.
And then they call it the feels. I don't know how I feel about that word, but okay, sorry. I wanted to make note of that.
Well, one of the things before we do start that patriarchy thing, she does say that meaning is important in life. It's good for you, that you do need to make meaning.
It doesn't matter where it comes from. You just have to make it.
Yeah, and it's not always, meaning is not always fun. I mean, the meaning that you have, and it offers a positive final value on your life. This is a big meaning type stuff. It's not constant because it can change. Over your lifetime, maybe what you valued in your life changes. And so meaning is not constant, but it is good for us to have that higher goal that we're striving for. And then there are enemies to that meaning, I guess, that take us away from it. And that's what she's talking about. The gaslighting in this Real Enemy, we talk about gaslighting a lot. And I kept thinking, where did that come from? And I thought, oh, she's going to tell me. So there was a movie it was called Gaslight with Ingrid Bergman. And her husband kept flickering the lights and telling her they weren't flickering.
Oh.
Yeah, and then he would change things up, and she'd go to look for her keys, and she'd left them there, but no, you didn't leave them there. He'd move stuff around, and that's called gaslighting.
That's where that came from?
Yeah. The movie was called Gaslight because it was made when the lights weren't electric,
Right.
and they would flicker, and he said, no, they're not flickering, and she thought she was crazy.
Yep.
That is gaslighting.
Yeah, so you've got to watch out for gaslighting. What is real and what's not real, and that's where she gets into this patriarchy thing, is because she says that we've been told stuff that's not true.
Well, and they claim that most self-help / wellness books leave this out, but they felt that leaving this out would be like teaching you how to play a game without telling you that the game was rigged against you. So, I think that's valid. And then, so women and girls, especially women and girls of color, are systemically excluded from government and other systems of power. This is what they call patriarchy. And then the patriarchy says it doesn't exist. This is the gaslighting, right? It says that if we struggle, it's our own fault for not being good enough. And then we go back into the human giver syndrome.
Yeah, which she says is a framework on which we hang the second shift, the shrinking but ongoing inequity of time and effort spent on childcare and housekeeping between men and women. 40 hours per week for women versus an hour and a half for men globally. And she's got that referenced in the footnote. And then she says human giver syndrome is the framework on which sexual violence hangs. The belief that men have a right to women's bodies, and if women look attractive to a man or puts herself in a position where a man can take control of her body, well, that's what happens. Men have a right to take what they can get. And she goes on with some other examples of human giver syndrome, deeply entrenched, and it takes time and practice to eradicate it.
What did you think about unlearning helplessness?
Yeah.
Does she go into the rat study where the female rats tend to keep swimming longer, even when there's no way out? That was kind of cool. Women tend to not give up. We persist. Yeah.
Even though the odds are against us, we don't give up. We can't. That monitoring system gets out of whack. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the discrepancy reducing. So we also talk about rage in this cycle of how it feels about the patriarchy, the feels that come out when you're in that situation. You can have rage, you can have grief, you can have despair, all of which are going to put you into a stress blow.
Then we get into the bikini industrial complex.
Go ahead.
Oh, this could go. We could have a whole podcast.
Well,
about
actually,
it.
you and I talked about a chart in here because I picked up on something. It was on page 109 of the book where they talk about the CDC it found that people labeled obese by the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention have lower health risk than those the CDC categorized as underweight. And that's kind of counter to what we think. And I asked you about this, so you'll have a response, I know. The study also found that being overweight, according to the CDC, is lower risk than being at the low end of the healthy range as defined by the World Health Organization. And another meta-analysis found that people in the BMI category labeled overweight may live longer than people in the other category, and the highest predictable mortality rate might be among those labeled underweight. What? Exactly what? It's bananas. But you looked at that chart and had a different opinion.
Yeah, well, I'm looking at this chart, overall health risk, and the normal weight, according to BMI, and overweight. They look the same.
It's men and women here.
It's men and women. It looks like normal weight is the lowest health risk, and overweight is just slightly above that. But years back, I was involved in a study with Duke and a rural health clinic and looking at overweight African American women because the research was indicating that at the overweight BMI, that was a healthy place for them to be. It was just we wanted to keep them there instead of having them gradually move up. And we do see in this chart, if you go into obesity 1, obesity 2, obesity 3,
it gets
you
worse.
See the health risk increase. And I think that might have been worth pointing out a little bit there, too. There's just nuance to it.
But you and I would argue about BMI as a measurement that we want to pay attention to.
Right.
Because
it's
if you...
not that meaningful in the end.
Yeah, so anyway. But I thought, oh, well, she's promoting that, so I hope some people flush that out a little bit, because if you have big muscles and heavy bones, you can have a big BMI.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't want to skim over the fact that there is this ideal to be thin. I think we're trying to move past that and bust through it, but it's still alive and well and exists.
Yeah.
I mean, luckily we're seeing more body positivity and different sizes and shapes being represented in our media, and I think that is very helpful. Mm-hmm. Like I signed on to Pinterest the other day, and if you look at style there, they gave you the option to pick what body type you have, and it was down from like a thin, no curves, to a much bigger body, lots of curves, and then everything in between, including in a wheelchair. And you got to pick what kind of images you wanted to see for your own style. Mm-hmm. That there was really cool. I love that. So I want to see more of that. But anyway, they call out that, it's going to be a major stressor if you're trying to conform to a culture that wants you to be thin at any cost.
And so if you're accepting that goal and then you're working towards it and you're not making progress, that discrepancy loop gets involved again.
Right.
So it's where do we set our goals and what do we expect of ourselves?
Well,
and can that affect how much risk we have for burnout?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they
so
call
readjust
out that we really need to readjust our expectations especially in terms of weight loss.
Oh, yeah.
What is actually doable to achieve, what we're willing to go through to achieve it. It's probably time to take a realistic look at that and bring in more body acceptance and focus on behaviors rather than your image or what you look like. And I think that's an important piece that they call out.
Yeah, and I think I'm beginning to feel more and more strongly about this as we do more reading. We've talked about total wellness, and we talk about, your physical wellness and your environmental wellness and your financial wellness and your, all the sectors of that thing.
Yeah.
But emotional wellness, I think if we pay more attention to being more in balance with our emotions, some of this other stuff goes away. Even the body, the size of your body might change. I don't know,
It
may not, right. So, but if you're focusing on the size of your body, you're going to throw your emotions out of whack.
Absolutely.
And so I think we're kind of backwards on this health thing. The more attention we're paying to how true our emotions, how well they are,
mm-hmm.
I think has as much effect as what we put in our body.
Yeah. Mm.
Now, the exercise is right there in the middle of that, because if you don't exercise, your emotions are out of whack.
Right.
Everything is sort of pointing to move your body first. That is the best thing we can do for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And then nourish our bodies properly, rest our bodies, and then maybe our emotions will be a little better. And then we would have the rationality, to say, that's a stupid goal for me. Why am I spending so much time on that when I have other things that are more important?
Yes. Yeah. Well said.
It's that rationality. We've got to get in touch with that. That's not a good choice. Mm-hmm. And that's that individual responsibility thing we've talked about too.
Yeah.
But how do you do that in your social, cultural mix? What she said, the media is out there telling us, oh, you're wrong. It's the gaslighting thing she's talking about. Media saying, you got to look this way. You got to have eyelashes like this. You've got to have fingernails like this. You've got to have a shape like this or whatever. And we're buying into it for some idiot reason.
Like the wellness gospel we read,
yes,
and how much money is in that industry to play on our need. And they say self-care isn't really us taking care of ourselves. The real self-care is us taking care of each other.
Yes, I love that. I absolutely love that.
And I love how she explains, it's normal for humans to oscillate between being a little independent and then needing each other and then supporting each other and then being independent. And that's what it means to be human, and a healthy, well human is to oscillate between that.
And she, in her, I don't even know which chapter it is, but in one of these chapters, she talks about the bubble of love. And anyway, number one
bubble
was...
Bubble of love.
Hey, I like
love.
It. Love. Trust is the number one thing there. And so as we were speaking, I was thinking, we hear the media, and for some reason we trust it.
Yeah, why?
With absolutely no underpinning to that trust at all. Well, I was at a leadership conference that our Chamber of Commerce did, and they had this guy named Henry McLeod who's written a book on trust. And I thought it might be I might read that just to see what he says, because she says in here, the belief that the people around us will reciprocate in proportion to what we give them is called trust. And so when we're trusting the media, there's no reciprocation on that.
Mm.
Is there?
No.
I'm questioning that. But we're just spending so much time watching media and comparing ourselves that we can emotionally get distraught, burn out.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not winning this game, so I'm just in despair or I'm frustrated.
She says, when the people in our bubble can turn with kindness and compassion toward our difficult emotions, and we can do the same for them, it strengthens the bubble like nothing else.
Hey everyone, this is Sal Valencia, your financial pal with Edward Jones. For those who don't know me, I am an advisor that will sit down with you and go over your personal and financial goals. I will break them into 3 categories: needs, wants, and wishes. I enjoy working through life challenges with my clients and help educate those who aren't familiar with investing. If you ever have questions and need someone reliable and trustworthy, give me a call. My number is 336-748-1271. Hola, me llamo Salvador Valencia y trabajo con Edward Jones. Soy un asesor financiero y lo que hago es planear para el futuro. Sé que hay muchos cambios que pueden ocurrir, pero siempre estará ahí por ustedes cuando pase algo. Si tienen preguntas sobre inversiones o cómo hacer su dinero puede trabajar más fuerte, Para ustedes, llámame. Mi número es 336-748-1271.
Well, so this idea of having a support circle or a social reality, as Lisa Feldman talks about in the How Emotions Are Made, this author also, or these two gals, Emily and Amelia, are also saying we're constantly co-regulating one another without even knowing or being aware that it's happening. So that, again, if they said you're the product of the 7 people around you, have you ever heard that saying?
Yeah.
So they're saying yes, you're synchronized, and you can even synchronize your heartbeats and stuff. I think that was kind of fun to think about. But certain kinds of connection can create energy. When you share mutual trust and connected knowing with someone, you co-create energy that renews both of you. Mm-hmm. And so when you're experiencing these other things that we might call sadness or rage or more emotional granularity in that terminology, but when we do that, if we connect with someone, we might fare better instead of staying by ourselves and trying to deal with it.
Right.
And it's hard sometimes for people to let other people in.
Yeah, I think you have to go against what you're wanting to do sometimes to get that connection you really need, right? Like if you're feeling depressed or in a low mood, isolation is usually the first response, but
Yes.
you have to counteract that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then it's also as the people around you knowing how to support you at that time is important too. And there's a woman named Kate something over at Duke in the Divinity School, and she's written a book about grief and also everything happens for a reason.
Yeah.
And I can't remember her last name, but she talks about here are some tips on how to be supportive to people when they're in need like that, rather than doing things like Tim said. I know how you feel. Don't do that. Don't say that, she says. But she has some other things that we think our intentions are good, but we're really inserting ourselves in an awkward way, and it doesn't help the person that we're intending to help.
Kate Bowler?
Thank you. That's her. Yes. Yeah.
All right, then we have a book on rest, or a chapter on rest, how important that is. We tend to just go with work, kids, social activities, and we have evening routines, meal preparation, bathing, shopping, TV, internet, all these things that we fill our schedule with, and we don't really have time for rest. And I haven't even shared this yet with you, Eleanor, but there's a book called, I think it's called The 7 Types of Rest that has caught my attention. I feel like that would be a neat one to read and
I'm
talk
ready.
on here. Okay.
I'm getting kind of tired.
All right. Well, we will literally die without rest. Finding time for a rest is not a first world problem. It's about survival. We're not built to persist incessantly, but to oscillate from effort to rest and back again. Because they talked about how different activities allow different types of rest. So she would go from writing the book to then, I think, walking on her treadmill for a little bit. And that was a different activity, even though it wasn't like lying down and napping. It was still
I absolutely
a form of rest.
embrace this. And I have a simple Pomodoro or something, this little timer thing that you can set, and it says, you need a break, get up, move. Because I can get so focused on things. I like to focus. I'm able to do that very well. But it's not productive. I would do much better by interrupting it. So I've learned as we're reading these books, I'll put little markers in there and just make myself stop and get up and do something else and come back to it.
You were telling me that the other day. I was admiring that that process you have.
Yeah.
And it was a hot day too, and so you were out there regardless of that heat.
Exactly.
Just getting your movement in. But getting the rest your body requires is an act of resistance against the forces that are trying to rig the game and make you helpless. Reclaim rest, and you reclaim sovereignty over your own life. So,
well, as you can tell, we were having fun talking about this book. There are a bunch of little fun things in here you could springboard some good conversations from. But as she gets to the end of it, she says, so we'll say it one more time, just one more time. Trust your body. Be kind to yourself. You are enough just as you are right now. Your joy matters. Please tell everyone you know.
So important. What a great way to end it. I like this book a lot. I would recommend it to just about anybody. women, and there probably needs to be one for men.
Absolutely. So I'm Eleanor at 360health4u.com, and I am working on prevention and prevention strategies and helping people select the products that can reduce some of the chemical exposures in their world and keep them healthy. And what we do every day does matter.
And I'm Kristen Norton, one of the registered dietitians at Well Balanced Nutrition, where we offer nutrition coaching and wellness and lifestyle habits support and accountability. Visit us at wellbalancednutrition.com to check us out and book a free clarity call.
The views and opinions stated in this podcast are solely those of the contributors and are not necessarily those of our distributors or hosting company. This podcast is copyrighted, and no part can be reproduced without the expressed written consent of Kristen and Eleanor.